Welcome to Hey Ghost Hey, the podcast about ghosts, ghost hunting, and other paranormal phenomena of the Pacific Northwest. I am your host, Charles Crooks, owner, tour guide, and psychic of Bellingham Ghost Tours. We are here because I like ghosts a lot. Now let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Hey Ghost Hey. And I find today particularly exciting because I have yet another special guest with me. And today I am joined by, owner of the Good Time Girls, Kolby LaBree. Welcome, Kolby.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
Yeah, no, I've wanted to have you on for a long time now, especially for my first season, because you were quite instrumental to Bellingham Ghost Tours. So do you want to give a little introduction on how that kind of came to be?
Well, sure. I've been doing historical walking tours with the Good Time Girls since 2012, and I've known Charles for a very long time as well, and we've worked with a lot of the findings you had back from the Boo days and things like that, incorporated some of that stuff into our tours. And I think especially during the pandemic, I just started to get the feeling that there was a lot of people very interested in doing more ghost hunting type activities, which I myself am more of a historian and less of a ghost hunter. So I kept thinking, Charles, you got to be doing this. People want ghosts. And so, I talked Chuck into starting up his ghosting again.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't know, but I had actually walked away from pretty much all my ghosting at that point, because Elena and I had been doing the ghost hunting class, and we felt like we'd kind of run our course with that, and by that point there had also been so many of the ghost shows out, and so we kind of thought that the ghost excitement had died.
Yeah,
literally.
I think the pandemic brought it back.
I think so. Why do you think that is?
I think people being faced with their mortality definitely, I think, spurs kind of an interest in what lies on the other side, perhaps. Because you do see that with spiritualism, for instance, like huge growth in the interest in spiritualism during the Civil War and World War I, and times of losing loved ones.
Mary Todd Lincoln, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Very, very famous for reaching out to psychics and spiritualists to try to reach her deceased husband.
Yeah, so I just feel like it's kind of the same thing where maybe people are worrying about the afterlife or what happens to folks when they're gone. Yeah, no, that very much makes sense. Have you personally ever had a ghost encounter before in your life? I call myself a ghost agnostic because I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I can know. And I have had some weird experiences that maybe, but nothing that I could say 100%. So
anything particularly stick out?
I mean, there was one time where I think I was a teenager, and I was upset about something, and I had gone for a walk in Whatcom Falls Park, and I was back on some backwoods trail, and I was crying because I was upset, and I thought I saw someone, a man, I thought it was, coming up the trail, and it was quite a ways ahead, and then I was like composing myself because I didn't want him to see,
naturally
see me crying. And so I looked down for a minute and was like wiping my eyes. And then when I looked back up, I couldn't see them anymore. Oh. And it was I actually got freaked out because I thought it was like a real person.
Yeah.
And I was like, are they hiding in the bushes or like where do they go? Because there was no side trails, or it was like very nowhere for them to go.
Right. So that's a little more concerning if someone disappears. Yeah.
And so I was just freaked out and like getting closer and closer to where I thought that they had been, and I just couldn't see anyone anywhere. I have no idea. It seemed very weird to me. And then I wondered if I actually saw it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, did I really see someone? I don't know.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. And I feel like Whatcom Falls Park is kind of one of the areas in town that gets overlooked a little bit for spiritual activity.
Yeah.
There was one time when I did live within the park, and I would go for walks often, and quite a many time I would see like orbs or just kind of weird light phenomena or something out of the corner of my eyes zip by quite often.
Yeah.
Or you even would feel like the presence around me. And some people say, well, duh, because it's right next to Bayview Cemetery, but I also think it's more so because of the water running through that area that has a little bit more to do with it energetically.
Yeah, I feel there's definitely an energy there. I mean, I grew up by it, so I spent a lot of time both there and in the cemetery. And I feel like Lake Whatcom has a similar vibe, especially in certain areas. But there is something about water.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I do agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that area, especially Lake Whatcom and Whatcom Falls Park, as they kind of flow right into each other, literally. So, yeah, wonderful spaces.
It just does, it feels like there's a deep time feeling to those places.
Yeah, I will agree to that. Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, speaking of adventures, we went on ourselves.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. We went down to Northern State Hospital grounds, which is something that I've wanted to cover for quite a while. And I've gone down now to investigate several times. So I first got introduced by Boo, of course, my time with that group. And we only had investigated the cemetery and some of the old barn grounds. But eventually we were chased off by security. And this was even years ago back then. So they didn't really like anyone hanging around at that point either. So at least not at night. So which I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you been before?
I've only been once. It was fairly recently, like a few years ago, with my kids, who most are adults now, but I still call them my kids. We just went down. It was an afternoon kind of jaunt, and wandered around down there. And I didn't realize that it has been mostly converted into sort of a park,
Yeah.
So there is a lot of public access now that I think is fairly recent. But I was kind of surprised at how accessible a lot of the ruins were. And there's signs, I think, that in some areas that are like at your own risk.
Yes.
And then, of course, part of it's still being used.
Yes, part of it is still Job Corps. Yeah. And they have a lot of signs on the actual campus itself to say no trespassing because of that, not to just keep people out of the buildings, but it's, actively
It was probably
use.
Smart of them to just people are going to come
be
attracted to this place. We might as well make it safe and, legit.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely say that as far as locations go in our Pacific Northwest home, that Northern State definitely tends to be notoriously one of the most haunted places that I've heard about year after year and consistently. So that's why I've always kind of had that interest in going down there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did Google after you said that, and I did notice there was a lot of articles being like, most haunted place or whatever.
Yeah, so I would say location-wise, it's definitely our most famous in our area. So we need something for Whatcom to kind of stand out a little bit. Yeah, Skagit's got that, but figure out for Whatcom. All in good time. But so we went down to Northern State, and I would say just outright, we did not have any overt or crazy encounters with anything. It was pretty quiet. But before we talk about what we did encounter or what we think might be there, let's jump a little bit into the history of things. So I'm going to just read through a very, very brief and condensed history that I kind of put together. And I know you have a story to share as well for a portion of that. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so this history is coming from the northernstatehospital.org website. And like I said, I'm just going to give a very brief and condensed version of this, but please go on, check it out yourself, as there's all sorts of pictures and quotes from people throughout the history as well, which is very cool. So starting off in 1910, the Olmsted brothers established Northern State Hospital as a farm extension of Western State Hospital. Patients cleared the land and built the facilities, starting with permanent structures like the administration building and chapel. The Spanish-inspired architecture provided natural sunlight as well as fire safety. Challenges for the time included the 1918 influenza epidemic and its highest patient mortality rates. Dr. James Winfield Doty became superintendent, guiding the hospital's growth. So the next up, I've kind of got this section down into decades. We're going to jump up to the 1920s. The patient population grew with new buildings, employee housing, and a superintendent's mansion added. The farm was thriving, but scandals over food quality and patient mistreatments began to emerge. Occupational therapy expanded, and the hospital adopted the maintenance law requiring families to contribute financially. And then investigations into the allegations revealed all sorts of mixed outcomes. And so you also found an article that was kind of interesting from the 20s as well, yeah?
Yeah, I just was kind of looking through my files on see if I had anything interesting related to Northern State, and I just had one thing that I had saved where it was a man from Bellingham who was a patient there, and he died in 1928 after a violent altercation with orderlies or guard there.
Yeah.
And so then the family had a private autopsy performed, and they were concerned that he died because of his injuries at this beating or whatever happened. The guard was later found not guilty. It was a very difficult trial because a lot of the witnesses were patients who were not considered mentally fit to take the stand. And then they did do a thorough, investigation of the hospital at the time, though, and found a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the stuff you would expect, but just lack of qualified employees and lack of funding and just not great conditions in general. So it doesn't sound like a very fun place to be, even then in the 1920s.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that too with this website, with all this history, I think it does do its best to still bring out the positives that did happen. But yeah, I think we do have to look at the very real history of what that was for a lot of people as well.
Right. It's a difficult one, because you are going to have patients who are violent. Yeah. And then, how do you effectively train people, especially back then?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Very different times. So. All right, jumping up to the 1930s, the hospital added new facilities, including a greenhouse and expanded wards. Tuberculosis and hydrotherapy were major health focuses at the time. The eugenics movement led to controversial sterilizations, and recreational activities like baseball and occupational therapy grew, and the patient-run hospital newspaper was launched. Despite challenges, patients express gratitude for their care. So that alone is an example, especially when you kind of have things rising and with these challenges, but yet they're still trying to paint a decent picture, which I understand.
Right.
So, yeah. But history is what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. What is worse, being on the street?
Yeah.
With absolutely no care.
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
That was actually one thing that I did find interesting reading through a lot of these stories is that they openly admit that there were no fences on the grounds as well. So people did openly escape quite often. Yeah. And so a lot of times they were brought back or voluntarily came back on their own. But sometimes people are found as far as Seattle that they had escaped out to. And I think there is even accounts of one woman who just said, I'm going to keep on going every chance I get. I'm not going to stay here. So Yeah.
So. I do find that a lot in newspapers where it'll be like, so-and-so, showed up from the asylum again or whatever.
Yeah. All right, going into the 1940s, Northern State Hospital faced challenges during World War II, including severe staff shortages and a peak patient count of over 2,100. Staff and patients supported the war effort by recycling materials and knitting for the Red Cross. Innovative treatments such as shock therapy and transorbital lobotomies were prevalent but controversial. Despite hardships, the hospital provided recreational and occupational activities to enrich patient lives with community contributions, enhancing their experience. So then jumping up to the 50s, under Dr. Charles Jones, Northern State shifted towards shorter patient stays and modernized treatments. Work therapy and rehabilitation programs emphasize patient recovery over institutional dependence. Recreational improvements included television, a beauty shop, and co-ed wards. A cemetery law change ended patient burials on site. Dr. Jones expanded hospital operation from farms to training programs before resigning in 1960. And then in the 60s, societal shifts led to quicker discharges and experimental treatments. Recreational programs grew, and patients enjoyed increased freedoms in modernized ward environments. Financial constraints caused staff reductions and cutbacks in services, contributing to anxiety over the hospital's future. A new medical building symbolized changing times but sparked debate over its placement on the campus. And then finally, we jump up to the 1970s when the hospital was closed. So deinstitutionalization policies and budget cuts led to Northern State's closure in 1973, displacing patients and staff. Some patients integrated into the communities while others faced homelessness, just like Kolby was kind of mentioning. The campus later housed programs like the Cascade Job Corps, like we'd mentioned, continues to exist today. And in 2018, the Port of Skagit acquired the property for redevelopment. And I will say I did reach out to the port, of course, when I started the tours, knowing about the history and just activity of the place. And unfortunately, they have no intention to do anything ghostly at all with the spaces. So I don't think we're going to get any sort of ghost hunt or ghost tour, unfortunately, of Northern State anytime in the future. So please enjoy the grounds responsibly yourselves. And I know it can be tempting to want to go in and check out some of these places, but please do respect the property laws and regulations, and ghost hunt responsibly. Please and thank you. All right, so that was a history of the place, but now I want to jump into our experience and kind of what we went through with going there. So what was your experience like in our little adventure together?
Yeah, I mostly just felt it was very peaceful. I didn't get any kind of vibes, maybe like a tinge of sadness, but I mean, that just comes with the associations of the place. It is hard to tell if that's just me, Yeah. So, I don't know. I feel similar to when I'm at Bayview Cemetery. It was just like, people are always like, oh, don't you get freaked out? And I'm like, no, I feel like it's a very peaceful place. I've never had anything scary happen to me there.
Well, and I think this kind of goes along with what we've talked about in the past, either together and what Elaine and I brought up too. It's like, as a ghost, if you are a ghost by choice, why would you hang around something that might have been more traumatic or a space that you not quite enjoyed?
Yeah, that was my thought, was like, I really hope that the people who died there are at peace wherever they're at, and not hanging around a place that might have been traumatizing to live at. Well,
and I think that kind of brings in my next point of, I have been to the grounds now many, many times myself, using equipment, going around, and I would say using the Ovilus. One thing I found interesting is that when we are there, it spits out words quite a bit. So that's the little box that kind of has the dictionary and will kick out words. And interesting enough, you brought out the point that, well, if there are a lot of energies here, it could be gibberish and not make a lot of sense.
Right.
And that at least seems to be consistent every time I have visited there using that device.
Okay.
Whereas maybe you might get some medical words that you can kind of connect, but you're really trying to stretch in making those connections. Yeah. Whereas other times, like when I did my investigation of the Mount Baker Theater, which is going to be a future episode coming up that I'm excited for, it really did seem to give words that were relevant and even names to relevant of the location. Whereas Northern State, it really just seems to be random and kind of gibberish.
Very random, yeah.
Yeah. And so I also will say with that, though, that I have had so many stories come my way about activity in the space. Granted, a lot of what people feel, or what you kind of described, is that sad, just overall sad feeling and that kind of like heavy feeling. And I mean, I think with a space like that has existed in so many years, you are going to see that kind of residual energy stack up over time. And so I think it can almost kind of have this like stain or kind of feeling left behind from residual energy. Whereas at least roaming the grounds, I wouldn't necessarily say I've encountered anything that feels intelligent or really seems to be interacting back and forth with you.
Right.
Yeah. And I even have on the tours I've had on the Fairhaven tour one time, a group from Job Corps came on the tour, and they did mention, like we're talking about, these feelings of heaviness and that it can feel very, very oppressive in some of the spaces that they're in.
Yeah.
And that can be very, very distracting. Yeah. Especially as you are trying to go about your daily life and work in that and just constantly aware of that history too.
Yes.
Yeah. So from what I definitely think there is activity, but I think it's mostly within a lot of the buildings. And I think that you're going to find a lot of those energy echoes within the buildings themselves.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we can't get in there. So it's just kind of working the best with what we have right now.
Yeah.
So, but we continued on after the main campus and then went off to the cemetery, which, did you feel anything there?
No.
Yeah, I really didn't either. And I've been there many times myself, like I mentioned, and still really nothing there. Yeah, the only sense that I've really gotten from the cemetery grounds is that there's a lot more bodies in there and on the expanded grounds than we might really know about. Yeah. But as you've dug through records yourself, you've said that they're pretty confusing at times too.
Yeah, I was just looking at this website where people have kind of been researching it, and there's like a map that they've created of known burials and then suspected burials. So there's people, researching it, which is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
And I'm glad people are giving attention to that.
Yeah. Because, there was, I think I read an article that was like, it's more of a monument to erasure than remembrance.
Yeah.
Which it is. It's very distinctive from a cemetery the way you're used to it, which has a lot of elaborate monuments. It's just a field with barely, you can't hardly even see the markers because they're just little numbers and a lot of them are grown over.
Yep. Yeah, so
and definitely. Even in the records, it was just like number and then initials.
Yeah.
That's how they kept the records, which is wild.
So, and you even brought out the point too that like cremated remains can exist in other places for a lot longer too.
Yeah. It says that they have a bunch of cremains stored somewhere also that are unclaimed.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely potentials of creating the possibility of lots of residual energy hanging around there from that. Absolutely.
But I was interested because the guy from Bellingham, like I looked to see if he was buried there, but he was buried in a private family plot. So that also is a thing where if patients had family, they could be buried elsewhere, but there's a lot of people buried there.
Yeah.
Which is sad because I think a lot of people's families, they would be either estranged or kind of just pushed out of sight because it was such stigma.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. So hopefully over the years we'll see some good things come out of the work that people are doing to try to uncover these things. Yeah. So initially, I thought that I was not going to have anything to share with our lovely audience this time, but I'm very, very excited to say we found something. We found something a little interesting. So to kind of set up what is happening here, there is some adult language in this clip, so
Sorry, my
children
bad.
beware. But that is the reality of going out there and recording the entire investigation, that you don't know when things are going to pop up and when things will show up for you. So we had finished with the cemetery, and we had gone to the abandoned barn section, the farm section. And we had just walked into one of these spaces. And so you had seen some graffiti on the wall, and that's what you're going to hear Kolby commenting on, not just personal opinions being thrown around. So
I'm quoting a NWA lyrics.
Yes. So let's go ahead
So bear
and
with
just
me.
play that first. So here we go, and then we'll talk about it. All right, I'm going to play that right now.
Fuck the police.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I was like, FTP,
That would be my guess.
file transfer protocol? Like, what? All right, that was interesting, yes?
Yes.
Unexpected, for sure. So you're going to hear Kolby, basically what's happening is Kolby says, fuck the police, and then you hear that whistle twice, which almost seems in response to her.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, after I finished being a nerd talking about what I think FTP means, there's a weird groan in there that kind of goes like, yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
That happens. And I don't know what we captured, to be honest. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
I don't know. It's such a loud and clear whistle.
Yeah, and we
It
did
kind of
not hear
took
that
me
with
by
our
surprise
ears.
when you played it
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, just to note, we did not hear that with our ears at all, and it was quiet through the entire time we were investigating. So again, I was really, really surprised that we got something, but it definitely, again, seems to be responding to Kolby or what we're talking
Yeah.
about. So
And then the groan to me kind of almost is like an animal or something, which
yeah,
or that's the first thing that came to my head because we were in the farm area too.
that
which
is true. And I
interesting.
mean, that is another possibility, that especially with the whistles and that groan, that maybe it is animalistic
Right,
spirit. Who
right.
knows?
I don't know. The whistle sounds like a person whistling.
Yeah,
to
I mean, it
doesn't
seems
sound
like
a
very
bird.
much in response
Yeah.
to what, like an excited response to
Yeah.
what you're saying. So yeah, all right. I'm gonna just play a cropped version of that with the whistle and the groan 2 more times. So here we go. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I was like, FTP. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I was like, FTP. Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. I'm super happy that I caught something, because literally every single investigation that I've done there in the last year, I have not gotten a single piece of evidence. So maybe you're good luck. I don't know. Got to take you more often.
I'll just be singing gangster rap drawn in those ghosts.
Hey, if it gets us responses, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right, so I've got one more very serious question here for you, especially that it came up with Elena last week, and I really liked it. So I'm going to ask you and every future guest that I have. So if you were a ghost, what kind of ghost would you be? How would you haunt people? What would you do? What would your ghostly life look like?
I don't know. I feel like it could be frustrating being a ghost for me because, well, I mean, I would probably want to hang around and watch whatever my loved ones were doing for a while.
Naturally.
But,
yeah.
that can only last so long, and then they're going to be gone, and then, I don't know, I just feel like I would get frustrated watching people because I'm already frustrated with people in this life, and I might just want to go off in the wilderness, I think, or somewhere. I would want to go see things. If I could travel, that would be awesome, because there's a lot of places I didn't get to go in life, or probably will never get to go, and that would be ideal if I could just travel the globe and look at stuff. But
Anywhere you'd go first?
I think overseas if I could, just because I've not done that as much
Okay.
as I might want to.
Yeah.
But I think I haven't really, I mean, I think the Middle East and like the Mediterranean is something I've always wanted to go explore, and Europe and anywhere.
Yeah. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also I feel like I would just want to go like into the woods and the mountains and like places where it's hard to access
Where
when
you
you're
can't
alive.
normally go, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
just hang out.
Yeah, I would explore the ocean so quickly.
Oh, the ocean. Yeah, good call.
So much down there that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Now they're saying that the aliens live in oceans.
Okay.
So,
Octopuses.
yeah. I mean, I can't remember what I was watching, but there was something that said octopus are basically aliens.
Yeah, because they have real weird DNA. That's not like anything else, I think.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
It's like, where did they come from?
And I do want to say I cannot quote whatever tribe this came from, but I think there are creation stories from native tribes that say like things fell into the oceans, or what we kind of knew as ocean creatures.
Yeah.
Came from the stars.
Well,
So maybe.
I mean, that's where life began.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Kolby, I cannot thank you enough for being here with me today.
You're
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And again, all of this would not exist if it wasn't for you getting this going. So thank you so much for your contribution, and still what you guys contribute to all of Bellingham.
Yes.
With just telling accurate history as we know it, and still uncovering all of these different facts and voices from the past, and giving them a place today. So thank you very much. Yeah,
that's how I get in touch with ghosts.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need more of that in all the different ways, because I think even too that we think of history in colonized history, but this area has such a rich native history, and I always feel like you do give voice to that in your post, and recognize the importance of that as well. So I thank you for that too.
Yeah, we try.
Yeah.
It's always a ongoing, and like, you know, we're always learning new things, and I think history and how we interpret it is always changing. So there's not, I don't think, one history that's some definitive fact.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But yeah, I love learning new things all the time. So
that's great. Well, thank you for
New
being
old
here.
things.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
You're
and
welcome.
I look forward to the future, as we're possibly planning some more future adventures together.
Yes.
And just to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure out the Blue Canyon mystery.
I know. Mystery. I know. Leave everyone on a little cliffhanger there.
Yep.
Because, I'm really excited to look into that one.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to see what we can find out. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here for another wonderful episode of Hey Ghost Hey. I am Charles Crooks, and you can join me for December's tours. They are up, and they will continue through the winter, just with an abbreviated run. But thank you so much for being here, and join me for next episode. All right, stay spooky, my friends.